Hey everybody, this is Paul. I'm with Gary Matsuoka and we're at Laguna Hills Nursery in Santa Ana, California. And let's do a quick tour of what they have to offer. Now, Gary's best known for his potting soil. We have his acid mix here and Gary's top pot. Could you share a little bit about it and why you think it's so important?
So we created this back in the 1990s, and at that time we had done some testing with potting soils versus sand and discovered that sand was 5 times, 10 times better than any potting soil that we were selling. So we had to make something as good as sand. We knew we couldn't sell sand in bags and expect people to buy it for potting because of the weight and the fact that it's pure white. So we created some mixes. The acid mix was the first one we created, and everything grows in it just fine. It's got material that holds air the best, pumice, a material that holds water the best, peat moss. We combined the two and got that one, and then we decided we want something a little more permanent for long term. What we were told by the trade is that potting soils in general are meant to last 5 months, just because in any other state besides California and southern Florida, you plant a plant in a pot in April and it's dead by November because of the cold. So they make potting soils in general for the United States that are supposed to last 5 months, and that's it. So we said, well, that's not good for California. So at that point we decided, yeah, this is going to be our thing. And we do sell a lot of it. We do sell it at about 5 other stores in California too. And then we started growing our own plants at the same time, because we found that at that time in the US, back in the late 80s, early 90s, all the nurseries were being told by the universities to grow plants in compost also. So in those days, the potting soil is made out of ground up trees, composted ground up trees, and the soils being used to grow plants were in the same material. And we're finding that a lot of plants that we were growing in the 60s and 70s were not able to grow on that, and the nursery stopped offering them. So we decided to start growing our own plants, and every year we've grown more and more of our own stuff. So in our nursery nowadays, it's getting close to half of the plants offered are things that we grew. Of course, we just don't have enough land and facility right now to grow everything, because you need about 3 or 4 acres to do that. So what we do is we choose the plants. Now we know with plants, some plants can tolerate the compost. We've got things like palms, pine trees, conifers like junipers and cedars, cypresses. They can tolerate it. Lilies can tolerate it. Roses can tolerate it. Bird of paradise is real famous for tolerating junk soil, and they can live in that. But there's a lot of other, and things like India hawthorn, just the common stuff. Even fruit trees like pomegranates and apples, they can handle, and guavas can handle the real nasty, boggy organic soils, whereas most plants in nature would rather live in real dirt, which is pretty much sand, salts, and clay. We have a little bit of succulents. I mean, that's supposed to be the thing for most nurseries nowadays, but for us it's a sideline, and of course next year with the continuing drought it may become major.
Yeah, I saw you have a rat tail cactus over there. I'm interested in.
We do a lot of herbs, and we grow a lot of our own herbs. We buy a lot in too. Most herbs are not very sensitive to bad dirt.
What's the most common herb sold here?
Basil.
Basil.
Basil and coriander or cilantro are the top 2 easily. And then the vegetables.
And can you grow a lot of these lettuces in the winter here in Southern California?
Well, this is the right temperature for them.
So it's a good temp?
Underneath the tables there, that's our next year's fig trees.
Ah, so you just have them there?
And we start cuttings underneath the tables, that's the right.
And are those in your top pot mix?
No, they're in our acid mix.
Acid mix, okay.
So acid mix we use for cuttings and seeds because it's considered sterile medium. Whereas the top pot, the only thing unsterile about it is the sand.
So if you were to grow dragon fruit from cuttings, say, acid mix would maybe be better?
No, we do it in the top pot.
Okay.
Because things like dragon fruit and plumerias, you let them heal over before you put them in. Whereas cuttings that are not healed over, yeah, they go in our acid mix.
You want them sterile. Right. Okay, that makes sense. We have some bromeliads here, epiphyllum.
We have a small shade area. We don't do much with shade plants. we do a little bit. I mean, this is one of our favorites.
That's beautiful.
Blue ginger. So we grow those. This is one plant that cannot take compost-based soil.
So it would kill it.
It would kill it. So we have to grow them ourselves. No one else dares grow those.
Put it in that sand.
And especially things like the California natives, like the ceanothus. We emailed with a professor at University of California, Berkeley, who wrote a paper, was one of the writers of a paper talking about how the reef vegetation along California highways is just failing. And he was telling me that, or in the article, they said the plants are coming to them from the wholesale growers with root rot already on the roots. So I emailed him my concerns about using recycled plant material, and he says, I concur. They should be growing all these plants in sand, not recycled plant material. And so we have to grow our own ceanothus, because if I get it from any grower, they'd be dead.
Really?
5 months in the pot, they're gone, because their soil after 5 months has disintegrated to a sludge.
That's crazy. These look so happy and healthy here.
Yeah.
And which potting soil do you use for these?
This is top pot.
Top pot. Okay.
Same with Antigoxanthus and kangaroo paws. They do not survive well on compost. Sea lavender just hates compost soil. They just are so yellow and brown tipped.
Yeah, but you see this all over on the coastline.
Right.
Just it's
Naturally,
invasive out there, and it's always growing in the sand. At least I know.
The most sensitive plant we've ever seen in compost, lavender, especially English lavender.
Really?
Yeah, you put them in any compost at all, even a tablespoon around the crown of that plant, it can rot out within a few months.
Wow.
So.
But a leaf litter would be okay, right?
On top of the ground is not a problem. Just can't have it in the roots.
In the roots. Okay.
So we grow a lot of lavender now because we cannot find any lavender that won't rot on the shelf. If you give it some time, they just rot away in the pots. But a lot of the California natives, because they've been only in cultivation for a few decades, they haven't selected out the ones that are hardy enough to live in compost.
Okay.
So a lot of this stuff, if you put it in compost, it dies. In our soil, it's got no issues. So
it's like a big experiment. Which ones can tolerate? I like how you said tolerate the compost.
Right. Even something simple like bougainvillea. If I get bougainvillea from a grower, this is one, here in November, it's going to sleep because the soil can't handle the cold. But our bougainvilleas will bloom all the way through winter because the soil breathes well and they're more insulated from the cold. I think the pumice that is in our soil is very insulating, pumice and perlite. Plus, what we noticed too is that if they're in the compost soil, the roots are right on the side of the pot because there's an air gap around the side and they're very exposed to the cold. Whereas in our pots, the roots are in the middle, which is less exposed to the cold.
A lot more,
so
that's protecting it, insulating it.
Right.
Okay.
So they stay in bloom. Whereas
that's crazy. This is a huge contrast.
Right.
So this one came from a different nursery or a wholesaler,
right.
And then these ones you grew yourself.
And they use a lot of sand, but they use compost with the sand. Whereas we have less sand than they do, but we don't put any compost in it.
Yeah, I do see some places using a lot of sand and cow manure, steer manure.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Not good.
In time, it's just going to turn to toxic?
Yeah. If it has enough oxygen, it's okay. But anytime you lower the oxygen level by burying it, it just, one thing what we've been told by the compost people, you don't have quite enough oxygen, you create a lot of acidity.
Acidity. Okay.
So I learned all this too at my house because back in 1993, I bought a house. We needed 170 cubic yards of soil to fill all our planter beds. So I called the soil company that I knew, and I told them, well, this is what I needed for, and they told me this is what you want, topsoil C, which was 60% sandy loam, which was good, 40% compost, which is not good, but we didn't know anything at that time. We thought these companies must know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're selling it.
Yeah, and so we filled up all our beds, put our plants in, and within 6 months, things just started falling over. We're amazed. We're going, okay, what are we doing wrong? Until we met that guy from the researcher from NASA. And he says, yeah, you can't do this to your dirt.
So he really changed your ideology, and when you worked with him.
He confirmed that what we were doing was totally incorrect.
Why are more people not aware of this? It's crazy. Just because A lot of people are just
It's
putting
the way,
things annually.
Well, it's the way academia is run. You
Yeah.
have to, you depend on the PhDs at the colleges to be the experts.
They think they could do better than this most simple solution.
Right. So when I was a kid, my dad grew everything in sandy dirt. It was very sandy. I played in it. I know what it was. All the farms would want that kind of, sandy loam.
Mm-hmm.
About 80% sand, 70-80% sand, only about 5 to 10% clay in it. And that's what my dad grew all his plants in. And then they said in the 60s, oh, it's too heavy. We got to lighten this load. So they started putting peat moss in it, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But peat moss has always been pricey, and coming from Canada, it's the supply is not as good. So in the 60s, they went to redwood compost in sand, which is not bad because redwood, especially the old what do you call it, the old stand redwood, that wood decomposes really slowly.
Really slow, yeah.
7 years to decompose. So in the containers, it was working. But then in the 80s, redwood got a little pricey because they lost all the original forest, and we're going to the second, we call it the second growth forest. And so everyone changed to, at that time, to fir shavings, fir bark and fir shavings, and that was the 80s. And we saw plants rotting left and right. And my dad says, okay, you got to figure this out. What's going on here?
That's going to decompose a lot faster.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. Fir shavings, like half a year, it's gone. The soil went like this in the pots. And then in the late 80s, the universities came back and says, okay, this will work better. So it's like 100% ground up bark. It's like, okay, they went the wrong way.
They just keep going.
So yeah, I mean, it might last a little longer, but it's still going to decompose, and you still end up with the same thing. So I don't know, and they won't. I've talked to a few of them directly, and they'll just rationalize why their view is better than mine.
They just justify it.
Right. They figure out ways to just.
You can see the difference here, right?
Yeah, because
here.
Their job was to create a soil out of recycled material that would make the plants grow faster than it does in real dirt, which they succeeded at. It's just that it becomes a toxic medium, and the
Over
research
time.
shows 8 months after they planted, it's toxic.
So 8 months.
They figure it's in the ground already, and they think it turns. Everyone in the trade thinks that the compost turns in the air. Well, we know better. If it's underground, it turns into a bog. It turns into sludge. It doesn't have enough air to, it just becomes a toxic medium. So we see a lot of plants from, there are certain growers we quit buying from because we couldn't keep their plants alive. We know what happens to them. I mean, if it doesn't kill them, they just look terrible for 10 years. If they survive the 10 years, that stuff is, at that point, finished decomposing. They get going. But it takes that long.
Well, let's see what else you have here. Looks like you have some beautiful conifers right here. Acacias.
Podocarpus. Then we come to our more of our edible section. We do grow a lot of passion fruit.
And it looks like you have some different varieties. Red Rover, never heard of that. What type of passion fruits is probably your favorite? Which one would you recommend?
It probably is going to be the sweet calabash. So it's not an edulous. It's a totally different species of passion fruit. But it's pretty reliable, and it's big fruit. They have kind of a greenish, yellowish skin when they ripen, versus purple for the edulous. We love the yellow passion fruit, but it has trouble growing here. It's too cool for passion fruit. I mean, even though they say it's global warming, the yellow passion fruit does not like to be below 80 degrees at all.
So it's really tropical.
It likes Hawaii or central Mexico or anywhere near the equator. But here, the yellow one, we grow it, but it just barely produces here. It's just not hot enough or long enough. Sweet calabash does fine. All the edulous do fine, and we haven't found much. The edulous, there's different shapes of fruit and slightly different sizes, but we haven't found that much difference in taste.
Okay.
So we don't usually tell people which one to get. So more of the stuff that we grow here.
Popcorn Cassie, it's one of my favorites.
Yes. All this stuff here, well, most of it is stuff we grow. And here's some of our babies that we are really proud of. This is an avocado, and so is that one, and those are 2 years beyond graft.
Wow.
So they were grafted exactly 2 years ago in the fall of, that'd be 2019. And they've gone this big. This one is a little more impressive only because it has about a dozen fruit hanging on
Oh my
it.
gosh, look at that.
Wow.
So these are in our top
I missed
pot.
that. So again, in Gary's top pot potting soil. And this is that long neck style of avocado? Or
This is called Don Gilligly. We think it's going to be our best seller.
Wow, that's beautiful.
That's impressive.
So are you selling grafts of it now? Or are you going
We have Brokaw Nursery up in Ventura. They do 1,500 trees for us every year.
Oh, okay.
How do those avocados taste? Are they pretty damn amazing?
Well, the internet will tell you that it's probably the best thing anyone's ever eaten, and we can't argue with that, but we haven't done a side-by-side comparison with their fruit because we've eaten these. One of our customers who's had a Don Gilly for 20 years brings them in twice a year. They have two ripening periods a year, and they're good. I mean,
Nice.
they're slightly spicy.
Are they
Okay.
a creamy, smooth texture?
Well, they're a daughter of Hass, so they're similar to Hass,
Okay.
but they've got what's seems to be a bit more flavor to them, a little bit stronger. So everybody was commenting, you don't have to add anything to this to make good guacamole. You don't have to add anything.
Okay.
It's spicy enough.
Really?
Wow.
So
That's impressive.
So that may become our best selling variety.
And when is this going to come out, something like this? Or is it out already? Could you buy it?
It's been on the market for over 20 years. The patent wore off, so we can carry it now too.
Oh,
It
okay.
was exclusive at another nursery
Oh, okay.
over there for 20 years, and now we got it. And the literature says it's hard to grow, but that's only because we weren't growing it. You get an avocado from any nursery that's not Brokaw, and it's not easy to grow it. In fact, the other avocados I've grown in the past that weren't in our soil or from Brokaw, I generally give up on them after 5 years of trying to make them grow.
Okay.
Just give up. You go, okay, this thing's never going to do anything. Whereas from Brokaw, I get stuff that grows 4 or 5 feet a year. I don't get that from other growers. So.
Yeah, this is a really happy tree.
And we notice the stuff, and if it's from Brokaw and it's in good soil, it can take about 110 degrees before the branches start burning. Any other grower I get avocados from in the past, 95, they start burning up.
So they're temperature dependent. Then once it's
Well,
95.
if they got good roots,
Mhm.
they can take it a lot hotter. If they don't have good roots, then they just
Curtains.
start burning at a very low temperature, relatively low temperature. So,
Well, awesome, Gary. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate coming here and learning from you.
Do you have any social media or anything you'd like? Website?
we do have LagunaHillsNursery.com. We
Okay.
have a website, and you can sign up for our weekly informational newsletters.
Okay.
And your YouTube channel, because that's how I found you, and I've been watching hours
Yeah.
of your soil videos.
Watch Gary's videos. Very informative. Lots of good information.
And this is Gary's Best Gardening?
Right.
Okay.
Awesome.
Oh,
Well,
you
thanks for having us up. I appreciate
you.
it. Cheers.
Thank you. All right, have a great day. Give us a like and a subscribe. Thanks for watching. We appreciate your time. Take care.